transportation has been mentioned as a key issue, and certainly it's no different here in northern Colorado and northeastern Colorado than it is throughout the state. And we hear reports that our road conditions continue to decline dramatically, and yet our highways are integral to the movement of goods and people in our region and throughout the state. How do you propose to fund transportation maintenance and necessary repairs in the future?
Thank you.
Almost there.
We'll get a check. We'll get this right. We'll start that clock. So transportation continues to be one of the most vexing funding issues, not just in Colorado, but across the country. As we begin to recognize the importance of cleaner air, some of the health effects that come from automobile pollution and other forms of pollution, coal plants or whatever, we're actually, it puts us in a very difficult position. I spent the last 6 years, I chair the U.S. Conference of Mayors, which is a large, all the mayors in the country, in Washington, big, large, influential group. I chair the Transportation Committee. And when you look at the new standards for miles per gallon, how we're going to make more efficient, not just sedans, but pickup trucks and SUVs, that means that we'll be driving the same miles, but using a lot less gasoline, and yet most of our transportation infrastructure is maintained by that gasoline tax. So it's going to be going down dramatically, and we as a community, right, whether you're talking about the state of Colorado or as a community across this country, have to figure out how are we going to get the revenues necessary, right? I'm not talking about increasing revenues, but just to maintain those revenues. We have roads in Colorado right now that are 85, 100 years old. We have bridges that are 110 years old, right? So, I mean, if we're going to begin to address some of these, and if we're getting further and further behind, as we don't keep up with our spending, at the same time that our revenues for the purpose are going down. So do we look at vehicle miles traveled and figure out some way of making adjustments to make sure that rural areas aren't adversely affected, so that they're protected? Because obviously, if you're living in Yuma or Ray or driving back and forth between Burlington and Holyoke, you're going to put a lot more miles on your truck than you, on your vehicle than you would if you're living in an urban area. But if it's vehicle miles traveled, is there some other way of the use as people go over bridges? I mean, I think the key is to get people together and say, all right, we're going to sit down and figure this out, and figure out what our priorities should be, and then once we come around that, go out united.
As I said about the dirty dozen tax exemptions, one of the biggest things to be done in the first term for this governor and legislature is undoing a lot of things that Bill Ritter and the Democrats did in the past session. They removed the 6% cap, the Armas-Gower-Byrd limit that said if our budget grew so much, the excess, which of course we haven't been struggling with for the last 4 years either, but if there is, that revenue is supposed to go into transportation. Well, now it doesn't have to because that limit was removed by the Democrats. The next thing we saw was the increase in your vehicle registration fees, and I'm not sure if they were just intentionally nasty about it, or they just didn't think about those of you who had 3 trailers and 4 trucks and 2 cars and some ATVs in your garage, and you got hit with all these vehicle registration fees so they could put them into roads. And we had $400 million that were supposed to come from Washington to go into road and bridge repair, and it was used to balance our budget. Instead, we have to focus on the priorities of our state: transportation, public safety, and education. And we have to start eliminating non-essential programs so we can take the revenue and put it into those 3 core programs of our state. And then I've just got one little pet peeve that I like to talk about. You know those big signs when you drive around Denver, go over the road, and you can't read it because it's too foggy out? And then you get close enough to it, you know what it says? Foggy out, slow down. Those are $130,000 a piece. And yet your rural roads aren't getting plowed in the wintertime. While the Denver metro area and a lot of other Colorado have more and more of these expensive signs going up over the highway. I don't get it. And I think we should stop it and take some of that. That's where CDOT, I think, spends money in inappropriate fashions and misses the common sense of making sure your roads are plowed in the wintertime.
Tom, how would you answer this question? He's had a lot of experience in that particular arena. The
fact, the mayor is absolutely right about the kind of ironic situation we find ourselves in terms of pushing vehicles to get better and better gas mileage, but then, of course, recognizing that in doing so, you reduce your revenue from the gas tax. It's a dilemma, that's for sure. So you have to think about some other way to deal with this. And one other way to deal with it, possibility exists for us to do more in terms of privatization of that transportation infrastructure. I know it's scary to people who think government is the only way to provide these kinds of services, but in reality, when you get to the bottom line, when you recognize that the old systems of actually funding and finding the revenue to support something like transportation no longer work, then you are forced to deal with, and that's the other thing we're talking about, that when I say, reducing revenues to government isn't the worst thing, because it actually forces you to come up with some innovative plans. We're doing it here and there, but it could be, I think, expanded to a larger extent. That is to say, that privatization factor. There are other ways to build highways than just have the government do it. So that's one thing. The other is, I mentioned the Noble tax before, Dan Noble. Recall that, and we did have a way of actually taking some general fund revenue and putting it into the transportation sector. Can't do that anymore. It's all sucked up by something else, all kinds of other programs. So, again, just as we've said, all of us up here, I think, more than once, what are the primary focus? What are the primary things the government is responsible for doing? Transportation is one. You've got to start thinking of not doing other things in order to support them.
Very briefly, I would refer to it as the Norton tax, if there's going to be some readjustment. We should change the name just in honor of someone who works so hard against taxes. So, I think the registration piece is an interesting point, again, where a broad brush create problems in terms of not just the multiple vehicles, but the fact that they're only used seasonally in many cases, yet they're still having to pay that tax. And I think that the issue around trying to charge privatized roads really doesn't work in rural areas at all. Every example I've ever seen going across